everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Dad. It's Francis and Nate. Your dads are back. We're here. We're talking. Nate, how are you doing? I know before we were recording, you were talking about having to go, even in Switzerland, having to go through some health insurance bullshit over there. So what's going on, man?
Well, unfortunately, I know people love to envision every single European country as having socialized medicine. And to be honest with you, most of them do, but there are a couple of countries that have either a split system or a system where you're obligated to have health insurance, but it's subsidized. And Switzerland is a country where you have to buy private health insurance, and you also you can only qualify for a public option if you're below the income threshold that would technically mean you're qualified for benefits, and that's not really a thing you want to be at if you're an immigrant, because that's depending on how they assess whether or not you're getting benefits determines whether or not you can owe them money back, because they love doing that in this country. Basically, if you're on benefits for anything, depending on what it is, that you can be obligated to pay it back. But then also there's a limit of time, you have to have not been on benefits in the last X number of years if you want to get permanent residency or get citizenship. So we have health insurance, regular health insurance, and the problem is that it's like the ACA where you change over, you have the window to register, but in our case we did everything we were supposed to, but I guess the place that we signed up with, they're our prices are just too good, there's just so much demand, and so they've just delayed it for 3 months, and so technically we're still insured by our previous insurer, but they're not actually honoring any of the shit we're supposedly getting from the previous insurer, and they also want to be paid for 3 months. It's really unclear, and supposedly we're going to actually finally get our base insurance stuff, but it's going to be effective starting the 1st of March. I've probably called the old insurer more than 20 times for various problems because they suck, and the new one probably at least 10 times. And on the last 2 calls, whatever their call center uses some kind of voice over IP thing, and it's having some kind of cutout problem. So suddenly it becomes a tremolo and delay effect. And I genuinely think that this is okay, listen, I'm going to have to expand my vocabulary and some stuff and not make simple mistakes if I'm ever going to get C2 certified in French. But this has got to be the fucking end boss of the French language, is having a conversation about health insurance with a guy who keeps trying to interrupt you and contradict you in a foreign language over the phone, and it's got a delay and tremolo where suddenly it just goes, it's talking to you because of the digital thing. And so, part of me is hell yeah, man, I'm boss maxing in French. The other part of me is can I have health insurance? Can I go to the doctor, please? I'm going to run out of meds tomorrow. Yeah. Can I please fucking go to the doctor? So anyway.
So how does that, if I'm working for McDonald's in Switzerland, does McDonald's have an option for health insurance that I can get?
No, you get, so basically base health insurance is, there's just a limited number of what you can pick. There's a couple of different kinds of plans and a couple of different kinds of copays and deductibles. And basically they are not legally allowed to refuse you. They can refuse you for complementary insurance like hospitalization insurance and loss of income insurance and ambulance insurance and things like that. But the base insurance, you have to have it, and you also can't be denied it legally. So if you work for McDonald's, if you move to this country and you started working for McDonald's, now bear in mind at McDonald's, in Geneva, the minimum wage starting salary is $26 an hour. Right. You would effectively go on the marketplace like Comparis or whatever, and you'd find something that you wanted. And a young person would probably get something with a low monthly premium, but a high deductible because they're not expecting to use it, kind of like the US. But friends of mine in the US who have described some of their rates have said that even the really expensive ones in Switzerland, even dollar compared, not just relative to earnings, but dollar cost is much lower here. The plan that I get, my new plan gives me free choice of doctor and also specialist. I don't have to get a referral to go to a specialist, and free choice of pharmacy. I don't have to go to an assigned pharmacy to get my prescriptions filled or have them reimbursed, or rather not reimbursed, but covered, basically absorbed. They go into that premium. And my annual premium is, I think, 300 francs a year, or my annual deductible rather. So after 300 francs, they have to cover 90% of it. And then after, I think, 700 francs, they have to cover all of it. And then my monthly premium is 575 francs a month. So that's $600 a month. So for me personally.
So Switzerland doesn't use euro.
They're not in the European Union.
That's weird.
No, it is not. If you know anything, I'm not trying to insult you, but Switzerland didn't join the United Nations until 2002. They are really into we are completely neutral. But they are in Schengen, which is the common travel area area of the European Union, which means if you have EU citizenship or an EU passport, you can live and work in Switzerland. Obviously, that would have been a lot more convenient for us pre-Brexit because Britain wasn't in Schengen, so it wasn't in the common travel area. Now, you could still live and work in Britain with a EU passport, but you had to go through passport control. In Switzerland, they can turn the border controls back on if they want to, and they do when there's like crime and shit. But like in general, if I get on the train from Geneva to Paris, no one is going to check my passport because it's in Schengen. Switzerland's also in the common market and the European economic area, so their like regulations and stuff are harmonized with the EU. So like they're basically kind of like a Norway situation where they're not in the EU, but they're integrated in enough that like it's pretty friction free for trade. And also 25% of Switzerland's population is foreign born, like not Swiss citizens. And so an overwhelming majority of those people are Schengen immigrants, because it's if you're Italian and like most young Italians who can't get a fucking good job, you can go to Switzerland and with your Italian passport, you can get the equivalent of a 5-year residence permit that lets you live and work there. So same thing if you're Spanish, if you're Portuguese, there's a ton of Spanish and Portuguese people here. I mean, that's kind of how do I put it? Switzerland doesn't use the euro. They're not the only country in the EU that doesn't use the euro, or rather in the EEA. I even fucked it up. But in a lot of ways they might as well be. I don't think they'll ever join because it's such it's like same thing with Norway. It's just kind of a hot topic, but that like they had a referendum and they said no, and like I don't think they're going to push it.
Right. We said no and that's it.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I really hope I don't sound like a fucking idiot here, but I'm pretty sure Sweden is in the EU and doesn't use the euro. I'm pretty sure they still use Swedish kroner, I think is their currency. Ireland does use the euro. When Britain was in the EU, it famously didn't. And Britain had a ton of like carve outs and exceptions granted to it. And it still wasn't enough because they had to use the British.
Because they had to be British.
Well, famously Charles de Gaulle said, don't fucking let them in the European coal and steel community. Like, don't trust them. Like they will stab you in the back. Like they're always going to be this way. And he was right.
Charles de Gaulle, man. He
very, 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 very tall man.
He knew the British people.
He did know them very well. Yeah. Charles de Gaulle, Joe and I have said that although Joe and Charles de Gaulle don't really share a ton of politics, they do share one common thread of being incredibly tall guys who are tankers, cramming a man like the fucking tall man in the Volkswagen from that Simpsons episode.
Yeah, and that's World War II tanks. That was when nobody was above 5'6".
De Gaulle was probably, quite frankly, I'm pretty sure he was World War I tanks because he was leading France in World War II. So I don't think he was. I don't think he was like doing fucking gunnery. Like he was literally,
he's doing gunnery tables as a 45-year-old chancellor.
He's like, listen, I have to stay up on your shit. I got to set the standard for my soldiers. Yeah, he's like the world's most sergeant major, 3-star general. So basically, to answer your question about health insurance, I pay like the equivalent of $600 a month for myself, and my annual premium or deductible, is I fully have to cover about the equivalent of like $325 a year. After $325, they cover 90%. I cover 10%. If it gets to the point where then it gets past a grand total of like $750 extra that I've covered out of my own pocket, that 10%, then everything else is covered for that year by them. And then, but like dental insurance is an extra thing I'm trying to get that. It's just
you gotta,
paperwork shit.
The luxury bones.
Well, it's just
your eyes need insurance. It's crazy how like I don't need a new insurance for my foot, but for my teeth and my eyes, I need a different insurance.
Well, it's just like, I mean, I've now been in, like, here's the thing. I got medical care in Germany as a little kid, but I don't really remember it. I got it in France for a friend. Like, I didn't need it, but a friend of mine in the program got appendicitis, and I was the only French speaker, so I had to be her translator and she actually had to go into surgery that day. And so I've seen, that was a private hospital we took her to, but like in France, you have both public and private healthcare, and you can pick, and they've got pretty good health outcomes overall for their population. Like France's system is pretty good across the board. I've obviously been in Britain's, which is completely state-run, state-owned. I've been in America's, which is like just a free-for-all fucking misery machine and profit extraction engine.
We would show up and see how much money you have to give us to not feel bad anymore.
I think the thing about it is with Switzerland is that hilariously, it's like everything that I've dealt with when it comes to dealing with the government, like it's hard to get a hold of them, but if you can go to the office and talk to someone, they tend to be really nice and really helpful. Whereas like dealing with business things, like there's an extent to which sometimes you're like, this is dumb. Like, why are you doing this way? It's really inefficient. And it feels really behind the times. Like weirdly, Britain has more advanced e-banking stuff than Switzerland. And I think it's because Britain kind of had to because of the EU, and also because, London's a big financial center. And as a result, like it is kind of going, it's not quite as bad as America, but it's like going back in time here when it comes to, for example, bank payments. In Britain, you can do bank payments instantaneously all the time, any day of the week. Doesn't matter the time. You know what I mean? in Switzerland, it has to be done before like noon on a business day for it to go out that day. And sometimes they still won't even let it. It has to go out the next day. And you can try to send it as an instant transfer, but then you have to pay 5 francs extra per transfer. Also, like business stuff is quite inefficient. Like so many things, like the quality of service is good once it's working, but if there's a problem or getting it set up, like it will not fix itself unless you complain. And like, obviously I speak French, but like it puts you at a disadvantage having to like complain and not sound insane and make yourself understood in a foreign language.
The payments in Europe, I think I heard somebody say like they heard about how we do it here in America, right? So if I go to a bar, and this still happens today, I go to a bar, I order a drink, I give them my debit card, I say, keep a tab open. They'll run it, they'll give me the thing back, and at the end of the day, they total it up and run the card. But like, it seems like in Europe, you could just be like, I'm going to pay for this pint, boom, I paid for it. Like, there's no handing you my card, there's no, like, it's kind of an instantaneous, like, rather than just, in the perfect world, you give, 10 pounds, you give the cash to them and they give you the change, but you've got some kind of instantaneous bank transfer that says, no, here's $7 for the beer.
Well, no, it's typically, so if you want to open a tab, you just tell them I would open a tab and then like you settle it before you leave, but like they don't take your card. At least I've never seen them because the thing is that most people, even if they're paying with a card, they're not swiping. Like most
Sure.
British and Swiss credit, debit cards I've had, for example, they have swiping, like magnetic stripe turned off by default. You can turn it on in the app if you want to, but because it's contactless, like it's the NFC reader.
Sure, I'm saying swipe because I'm 40 years old, but yeah, it's, tap to pay.
Sure, no, I understand, but I mean,
like
that was the thing though. Is it like, I mean, chip pay even feels a little bit out of date now, just because it was so like the future compared to America for so long, and then now like it's kind of rarer. I mean, I think the times when I'm obligated to pay with chip and pin is if I'm buying something and it's like a significantly large amount of money, like over the threshold of contactless. But if you're paying, like for example with Apple Pay, I think the threshold is higher and it's different. I would say I go to the pub if I'm in Britain. I go to the pub with people and I'm buying around, so it's going to be fucking £7 per pint. Hopefully not that bad. And I'm buying around for 4, so 4 of us. There's 4 people drinking, so I'm paying £28, right? I go up to the bar and I say, I'd like 4 pints of X or whatever the order is, and they tell me the bill. They bring out like a battery powered, like a remote Bluetooth or whatever Wi-Fi connected card reader with the amount from the register, and they run it, and then I hold my card out or I hold my phone out to do Apple Pay and pay it, and it pays. And so it's just a debit card charge. It's not a bank transfer. But the thing is, in Britain, for example, so I have my business in Britain and I handle a lot of the merch fulfillment stuff. So if I get a bill from a vendor, like I'm buying, I'm having a bunch of shirts printed, typically at a certain point, like they're going to deal with fees if they have credit card, like run through credit card processing stuff. And so they prefer it to be bank transfer. So they give me my invoice and it, all my order that I put through, and on it, there will be a sort code, which is like the equivalent of a routing number, and their account number, the amount I'm supposed to pay, and then the reference. And I go into my banking app, I enter all that in. If I have them saved already, then it's already there. I just enter in the reference number and the amount, and I send it. And like if they're using, for example, a Challenger Bank or even HSBC, or like they have the app on their phone, they'll get a ping immediately that the money is there in the account. Like if you get paid, but someone pays you on PayPal in Britain and you transfer to your bank, in like a second, it's in your bank account. Like if you want to, it's weird. It's like, it's free if you do it that way. For some reason, the PayPal UK, if it's like, oh, do it the slow way and it takes 1 to 3 days to get to your account, for some reason that you pay extra for. I don't know why.
Man, also I don't understand, you saying that like, hey, you can do this 24/7.
Yeah, because
like it kills me that I will get emails from, my financial things, but like, hey, Monday's a bank holiday, so money transfers aren't going to work. Like it's literally just electric zeros going from one place to another. Why do you need to be open for those bits to go from one place to another?
Some things aren't going to process, rather that like they're not actually in the account yet, but like in terms of how it works with kind of clearing and stuff, if you send, you send your payment, like you can debit your own account balance, you can send it to someone else, theirs will get credited. And also like checks aren't really a thing. And like I have received checks before, but it's very rare. I think I've received a check.
No, but nobody uses checks here either.
Really? How do you pay your rent? Or your mortgage? I guess online.
Well, I haven't paid rent in years, but I know that, some people use, Venmo or other cash transfer things. I actually had to get checks because one of the events that we signed up for the Rotary Club, like most of them say, hey, I want to be a part of your event. Here's some of the stuff that I sell. They say, cool. They'll send you an invoice on PayPal or whatever, you pay it and you're good. But this one, they's like, look, we need this in triplicate. We need you to send like print out pictures of what you're going to sell. We need a self-addressed envelope to send you this stuff back. And we need a check sent to us. So I don't know, that's just a Rotary Club thing maybe, but it was an insane, like I have to go and buy checks so that I can send you guys $100 because God knows using PayPal would just be too much, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, so I left America in 2018 and I paid my rent by writing a check to my landlord. And that was, a paper check. He came by eventually I worked for him. And so eventually I had login credentials to his bank account. And so I would actually collect the checks from all the tenants and deposit them into his account. But he would check. And if like that wasn't done by like the 5th of the month, he'd call me and yell at me. So like I had to do it. And obviously like he was checking. So I wasn't gonna like fuck around. I'm not stupid. But in London, we set it up with a direct, basically like a direct debit standing order thing. So it would just, that amount would go out to the property management company every month. And then here I have a similar thing set up, but it's not through, like they didn't send me a direct debit authorization. I just set one up in our joint bank account. And it just does a bank transfer to the, not even the property management company, the actual landlord, because the landlord's an institutional investor. We pay our monthly rent to a cantonal pension fund of one of the cantons of Switzerland, because I guess they own this building and they extract rent from it. I don't know. It's interesting. It would be like, it's like we have that, but not typically like, well, I guess we probably do now in America, but there are things like, for example, where like water companies in Britain are like mostly owned by like the Canadian, like the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I obviously like what I remember in America is writing checks and they have to go get, endorsed and deposited. I got a check once in Britain because this is really weird, but when you have a company and you have to pay taxes, you pay them either 6 months ahead and then the other 6 months is due. So basically like the end of January, the end of July. But if you want to, you can pay the full amount in January, and then the UK government will actually send you a check for the interest at like whatever their interest rate is for the amount of money that you prepaid, how much it would have accumulated in 6 months. The funny thing is though, is you get the check and you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this check though? Because like no one will take them. So like my bank, the way you deposit, like the business bank, the way you deposited a check was you had to endorse it and then put it in the mail to like a random post box in like Nottinghamshire, and they would then get it and process it. And it did work, but it took like 2 weeks. It was so like no one uses check. I mean, you do get them sometimes as like refunds from banks or like refunds from the government, but like it's very uncommon and no one pays with personal checks for stuff in my experience. It's all like, hey, I'm going to pay you for things, PayPal is one, but then oftentimes it's just like, give me your like sort code and your account number and I'll do it on my phone and send you money. Mm-hmm. Here, it's so funny. Some of the weird names. There's a similar thing you can do. It's called Twint. Great name. TWINT. It sounds like it's like, wow, it's 3 different misogynistic words, but also twit. But basically what it does is if you want to get money from somebody, and you can do this to pay some like restaurant bills, like I can do it when I'm buying groceries at the payment terminal. It generates a QR code basically, and then the person opens their app and they scan it and they pay you. And so it's not like a fixed QR code. It's just like, oh, you want to get a payment from someone. I think actually you might even be able to do one scan this in the restaurant or some shit. I don't know if I've ever seen that. But like every time I go to the payment terminal, the little LCD screen pops up, and when it says like you're paying by card, on the display, a QR code pops up. So if you want to pay by Twint, you can do that.
I tell you, the first place that I saw, somebody brought the bill and you go up to the front and pay, or you could just scan it, was the American Institution of Cracker Barrel. I love Cracker Barrel. Whenever we go traveling, we stop off at a Cracker Barrel somewhere, and they have the QR code on the bill, so you can just snap the QR code and go about your day.
I like Cracker Barrel because their pot pies are pretty good, and also you get a window into the latent pathos and hostility and white American life. But I haven't been in one in a long time.
It depends on which ones you go to, because we go usually when we're going on a road trip, we will stop off at a Cracker Barrel. It's one of our traditions. Like, get yourself a good breakfast down before you do 4 hours of driving. And the ones we go to are pretty diverse. Like, there's a lot of people from all colors and all walks of life inside of Cracker Barrel, working there, eating there, all kinds of things. So
the last time I went to a Cracker Barrel was, to be honest with you, I think like after I graduated from Ranger School, I think that we stopped at one. Me and my buddy went on vacation, like a 4-day weekend to Savannah in low season. It was actually really fun, but yeah, we went to Savannah and we stopped at a Cracker Barrel, and so this would have been like January 2008, which I realize now was 17 years ago, and it fills me with something approaching dread. But then also I'm like, I recently had another dream that I was back in the Army, and I'm just so glad that's not the case anymore. So
every once in a while I have those I'm in the Army and I have to be in charge of people again kind of dreams. But no, Cracker Barrel is great. You can buy booze there now, so it's gotten even yeah, you can buy, they have like margaritas and shit. They got beer, domestic, cheap domestic beers, but you can get trashed at Cracker Barrel and fight in the parking lot if you really want to.
Get fucked up off on some like, Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville tier mixed drink and then get in your car and drive on like, I-85 or whatever.
Yeah, right. And because it's Cracker Barrel, you're doing this at 11 o'clock in the morning because church is already let out and you've already tied one on.
Yeah, it is funny. Like someone asked us recently, a friend, one of Cynthia's coworkers invited us to dinner and she's Polish and she asked like, what's the sort of etiquette with like when people bring stuff? Because we brought a bottle of wine and I said, in the United States, it's like, because a lot of people don't drink, like you normally ask in advance, like, should I bring like snacks or desserts or something? You do bring something, but whereas in Britain, it just seems like it's kind of a no-brainer. You just always bring a bottle of wine. Mm-hmm. And so it's weird. It's like, I do hear this stuff though, that it feels like America's gotten more reactionary, but also more alcoholic in a lot of ways. Like people just,
God, very much so. Yeah. We used to have that problem too. My wife and I do not drink wine. My wife doesn't drink at all now. And I have a beer or two a week. And my father-in-law for Christmas always gives me a bottle of whiskey and he gives us a bottle of eggnog, the Jack Daniels eggnog, which we throw in the fridge for a year and then don't drink until somebody remembers that we have it the next year. And he always gets me a good bottle of whiskey. I don't really drink whiskey that much though, but yeah, we have so many bottles of wine that I have no idea what to do with because I've never had a thing for wine. I've never enjoyed wine. So the idea of bringing one and, a lot of times what we did was we would just regift it. Like we're going somewhere here, have this bottle of Coppola wine that I don't want, but it's been dusty in my basement for the last 8 years. Here you go. I've heard that it's better the older it is.
Sofia Coppola canned champagne was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge wine drinker. I mean, I do like it. I will say that it's something that I hadn't really, because I think that I always erred on the side of buying red wines just because like I had more of them. And so I kind of knew which ones I liked and which ones I, like if they had a certain kind, like from a certain place, like I'm not like a aspiring sommelier or a wine head, but like there's some really good South American red wines, for example. There's some really good Australian red wines, like things like that, British Columbia, Eastern Washington.
Canadian wines, microclimates.
Well, I don't know about the Niagara Peninsula and all that because I think it's far colder. But you know how like Seattle, like they do have hot weather now, but like in general, like if you were at Fort Lewis in the summer, it might be like 95 one day, but it also might be 40.
I spent 2 weeks in the summer at Fort Lewis.
We had people go down as heat casualties one day, and like it was literally like 95, and then when a couple weeks later when we were in our FTX, it was 39 one night in August.
The barracks we were staying in didn't have air conditioning, so that was really fun.
Ours neither. They were the old World War II ones, the like shacks with the little like burner stove outside. If you go east of the Cascades, obviously it's a much more extreme like continental climate there, and that's true north of the border in British Columbia as well. So while like Vancouver Island, Vancouver the city, like is way more, it's like Washington State, Pacific Northwest kind of climate, or like Seattle, Puget Sound, that area. Eastern BC has a very hot climate, which is good as I understand it for wine grapes, and some of their red wines are absolutely fucking phenomenal. But I just don't drink that much anymore, and I think like the level of kind of being in like sampling and tasting and drinking that you want to do, like I just don't really, honestly, I don't even buy wine that often because like I like wine, but I don't want to be obligated to finish a bottle. I don't want to feel like I'm wasting a bottle. And one thing I appreciate about this country is that they do actually sell smaller bottles of wine that like aren't just like hobo juice. But one thing I will say though is that like I didn't really appreciate this until coming here and visiting and friends in warm weather, is they have really, really, really good red wines here, or white wines here rather. I'm not 100% sold on Swiss red wines because I just what I've had hasn't been necessarily great, but their white wines are, I mean, that's when I'll be like, okay, I will actually drink this. Like, dude, like I don't want to get hammered. Like I don't think I've been drunk I haven't been drunk since the incident with the fucking Buckfast back in November, which wasn't really my own volition. But I just don't really drink. So
yeah, I've found the perfect mix of sating my latent alcoholism without drinking like an asshole is that you can buy single cans of like a 19-ounce beer or 20-ounce beer. I don't get the full 2x4s, and I get a good beer. I don't get like a big can of but Steel Reserve is the big one around here.
Oh god.
But Busch or Bud Light. But the great thing is I can buy this big can of beer, and the beers that I like are IPAs because I hate my taste buds and I like to burn them all out. But the other great thing about an IPA is that usually they're a high alcohol volume, so it's like, okay, I'm having one can of beer, but it's like an 8% ABV, so I can sip on on that and not get drunk and not, but still like feel like I'm getting something here and not feel like ass the next day. But yeah,
so it's like drinking a Russian beer basically, where it's everything is at 8%. Russian beers are stronger concentration than like Western European ones. I think in general, they might have your garden variety, like, you know, weaker lager beers or whatever. But the Russian beers I've had
your working beers, your 4% beers that you can drink all day at work, and then, you know, your evening beers were 17%.
Milo told me something that I found really funny, and other people who have lived in Russia have told me this too, that like Russians are actually very, very culturally opposed to the idea of drunk driving. It's just that they don't think beer is alcoholic. So like if you have a single mini like thimbleful of vodka, it's like, no, you can't drive. It's not safe. Like that's irresponsible. But you could drink like 12 of those 8% beers that are like a fucking half liter a piece and be like gone off your mind, like full on, like like the way we used to drink in high school when someone had a bonfire, and then be like, oh yeah, well, you know, it's like drinking
beer.
soda.
It's not real.
You might have to pee a lot when you get home, but you'll be okay. No, I don't. I think for me, I was laughing about the idea of talking about the strong. First of all, I hate IPAs, but also, have you ever had I hope you haven't, because there's no reason to. The Samuel Adams Triple Bock.
Oh.
It's sort of like the like novelty extra strong beer that it's like what if beer was soy sauce?
Yeah, I've had 2 Sam Adams in my entire life, and they're the fucking nastiest beers I've ever had. The only worst beer I've ever had is a Foster's. Well,
what are you talking about? They're,
oh my god, Foster's
Sam Adams it's not great, but it's fine. Like Foster's is also fine. Like Foster's is just a lager. Maybe
I just don't like lagers. I don't know. That might be because
IPAs taste awful. Like they're the.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. I know that an IPA tastes fucking nasty. It's just that is how I drink black coffee. I eat spicy foods. I drink IPAs. I just, you know, I have a taste for bitter, I guess. I don't know. That's what I like.
I don't drink black coffee anymore. I mean, I can. Like I would say that if I did like pour over, I would drink it. When I'm home visiting my parents, you know, and you have the good old Mr. Coffee style coffee, like I'll typically drink it black. Also because like I don't do very well with dairy in America for sure, but also like this is going to sound like witch doctor shit or like, you know, some kind of psychosomatic like placebo effect, but I don't really have a problem with any dairy here in Switzerland. But in Britain, for example, like drinking milk in my tea or in coffee would upset my stomach a bit. In America, it'll like make it really bad.
It'll kill it. Yeah, I have that same problem.
And I would think to myself, like, you're just imagining it, except my wife years ago dated a Swiss guy, and he studied abroad in the US a couple times, and both times that he did, he experienced that there wasn't basically any milk except for like maybe one kind of like Rhode Island local dairy thing where it didn't make him sick, but like born and raised in the German part of Switzerland, like milk is just like such a thing. It is here too. And so like here, like I'm drinking like my early afternoon coffee because it's, you know, it's a little before 2 p.m. here, and I put cream in it, like coffee cream in it. I couldn't do that in Britain. I drank oat milk for all 6 years I was there because it would make me, it would just give me mild indigestion, stomach problems, run to the bathroom, the fucking punish the toilet kind of stuff, and that's just not what I want.
Yeah, I had that problem. We go to Aldi and they have a really good oat milk creamer, so if I'm doing tea, I'll have a little oat milk in it. But yeah, I think we were in Kansas City last year for one of my daughter's dance competitions, and I don't generally get coffee from like Starbucks just because it's expensive and I don't really like it that much, but also because if I'm not paying attention, they put real milk in it, and then I'm going to be like, I had a real milk latte of some kind, and it's like, hey, I need to go like lay down on the floor for 3 hours because
and it's funny because it's like you might not know it, and you might have been like, I ordered oat milk, so you know there's no like placebo effect happening, and then all of a sudden it's like fucking King Poseidon is whipping up a storm inside your stomach, like stabbing with the trident and everything like that. It's just it's bad.
I don't know what the milk version of Montezuma's Revenge would be, but that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Louis Pasteur's Revenge. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have found that, I mean, it's weird because, yeah, like drinking like a glass of milk, for example, is just not really a thing outside of America unless you're like a little kid. And to be honest with you, I don't even really recall it being a thing when we were kids in Germany. Like they didn't give us milk in school if we had school. Like we had a day where we almost never had school lunch, but like if we were at like a off-site school thing and they provided food for the kids, like there was never milk. It was always like juice. And I suppose you could, but like you don't buy buy like gallons of milk here because like when you think about why people are buying gallons of milk, it's typically because they're putting on cereal and they're also drinking glasses of it. And like, that's just not really a thing here. I mean, the cereal thing, like people mix yogurt in with like, that's the whole like muesli concept is mixing it with yogurt.
I can see that.
Yeah. Like when you buy muesli here, like
granola and yogurt, why not throw your Cheerios on your yogurt?
Well, no, I don't know about breakfast cereal because it is a thing here, but You
don't have Fruit Loops over there?
No. All the people that I have ever, like European people I've ever stayed with or lived with, all the families, even families with little kids, I have never seen them have breakfast cereal, like cereal with milk, to be honest with you. I mean, I think in Britain it's more common, but it's still not as common. Like when I was a kid or when I would stay at my friend's place or like when I stayed with the host family when I lived in France, like breakfast stuff for kids was typically like bread and Nutella or like yogurt with like, the sweet kids yogurt with like fruit stuff in it and things like that. Sometimes like in France, they would literally take like plain yogurt and put jam in it and stir it up and eat them. And like, yeah, it's not really, I mean, obviously you have the fancy, not actually fancy, but seems fancy French toast, which is literally just dipping bread in beaten eggs and cooking it. Yeah. But muesli, like it's weird because, there's all the kind of health stuff in the US in the 70s. Like, and there were periods of time where weirdly like some Swiss stuff was like kind of trendy in America, like fondue. Muesli is like, you buy the dry muesli, like the granola mixture stuff, but when you see it prepared, like when restaurants sell it or like grocery stores sell it, it's been mixed with yogurt. And so like Berkshire muesli, like the real kind of standard one is, I don't quote me on all the ingredients, but it's basically that granola mixture with yogurt and then like some fruit, like very finely sliced bits of apple, like some berries, maybe something like that. So yeah, the dry cereal stuff or like putting milk on your cereal, I think that's like the big kind of proximate cause of buying gallon jugs of milk. And like, I just don't see people doing that here as much.
We did for a while. We were buying, because my daughter drinks a glass of milk every day, which is good because it's hard to get calories into her sometimes. But we were buying this like ultra pasteurized milk that like has all of the lactate like burned out of it or something. And it was interesting because it was the first time I could drink, like my wife's just like, no, you can have this without wanting to die, probably.
Yeah, lactose-free ice cream is a thing too.
Yeah, and I have no problem with anything else. Cheese, ice cream, sour cream, cottage cheese, none of that other stuff bothers me. It's just straight up milk. Like liquid milk, liquid creamer, dairy creamer is what really fucks me up. So
I was trying to find the guy and I can't find because I want to credit him, but I remember a dude on Twitter and he's like a pretty accomplished writer and cartoonist. And he made the comment that he's Hispanic, like Mexican American, I think. And he said he was visiting Spain on holiday and he asked for a glass of milk in a restaurant. And he said like it took him a while to convince the people, even though he spoke Spanish, and that when he did, like the chef came out to look and be like, who is this freak who wants a glass of fucking milk?
Like a glass of 4 whole fried chickens and a Coke. Yeah, it's one of those situations. Yeah, that milk was great though. It did work, but also I'm a 41-year-old man, and no matter how much like, okay, I can drink this glass of milk, I'm not going to drink a glass of milk. I'm drinking water most of the time regardless.
I mean, I'm fully willing to admit that I am in a situation of being like ultra spoiled in terms of just like the quality of things here. Like obviously it can be like comically expensive to buy meat, for example, because like I don't yet have my driver's license and I don't have a car, so it would be very inconvenient to go across the border and buy groceries for cheaper. And typically, it's not always the case, but typically when you buy meat here, it's going to be Swiss produced meat. So like the quality is unbelievable, but like it's expensive. Like I bought a pork loin to roast on Saturday and I got the non-organic one and it was like 800 grams. So that's like close to 2 pounds. And it was 26 francs. So that's like $30. But if I had gotten the organic one they were selling next to it was actually less meat. It was like 550 grams. So like a little more than a pound. And it was like the equivalent of $40.
You need to go to that French Costco.
Yeah. Go to, what is it? Carrefour is the big one. There is one of them. And then there's a bunch of other big French grocery stores. I really can't remember. Like it's almost like leaping out right in front of me that I can see like the goofy ass logos and things for all of the French grocery stores. But Monoprix, I think, is the other one, but I can't remember. They're very close to us here, but they might as well be on the moon right now because like getting across the border would be a very long bus ride. And to make it worth your while, I have to bring my passport, which I actually don't have my British passport right now because I had to send it in to get renewed. So I don't know how it's going to work. I'd rather not try my luck with that shit. If someone rolled up on a watchmaker here and shot it up full of holes and stole all their money, and then like they're going to lock the border down and check everyone's passports. This does periodically. Rarely is it shooting, but they'll just drive a car into a jewelry store at night and crash into it and steal everything. And almost invariably it's people who've come across the border from France. And so like they'll just suddenly randomly set up checkpoints and start checking everyone's IDs. So on the buses and trams too. So you don't want to be, playing that game. Yeah. You don't want to be caught lacking and be be like, excusez-moi, mon passeport est à la maison parce que je suis un dumb foreigner, you know, and I do have like my passport, like a scan of it, but, and
That
I have my
doesn't count.
residence
That doesn't-
permit. Well, I also have my American passport, but my residence permit says my nationality is British, so it's like, vraiment, there's not really a difference, you know. No, je te jure, je vous jure, c'est la même chose, exactement la même chose. Il y a aucune différence entre américain et anglais, britannique. My French gets worse when I start doing it intentionally in a bad accent. like it gets markedly worse. It's very funny.
Yeah, it's worse when you're trying to make fun of them.
I'm
rather
worse
than when you're
when I'm trying to make fun of myself, when I'm trying to make fun of my do like, parce que si je parle français comme ça, c'est normal, c'est comme je parle au quotidien. Like when I talk like French in this, it's like how I speak on a daily basis. Mais quand je parle français comme ça pour exagérer mon accent américain et je veux communiquer l'idée que je suis un complete idiot, I actually start sounding more awkward and stumbling and stuff because I'm paying more attention to like saying stuff wrong, if that makes sense. And
you can really catch that Midwest accent on it. My wife's been learning French too, and it's I'm glad that I didn't pick French because that is a hard language to get your mouth around. At least Spanish, like all the mouth movements are the same, other than rolling your R's on occasion. But
watching my daughter, because she's been counting and almost entirely in French. She doesn't really do as much English, but she'll be counting, and she loves counting wrong, going like 1, 2, 3, and then 6, or 1, 2, 3, 10, or 1, 2, 10. But watching her do it and going 1, 2, 10, or 1, 2, 6, or whatever, doing it wrong. When she pronounces de, like she really does like the lip pursing thing the way that they do. And like there's an extent to which I am like instinctively, I'm kind of copying it, but like the way that native speakers speak French, like they really do the mouth movement things for saying stuff like de, you know what I mean? Like, and il y en a aucune raison, etc. Like there's no reason is what I just said. I do find it funny too that one of the things that French people say is like a colloquial thing. If like you bump into something, like a little kid bumps into something, they'll go, "Op." So they're basically saying "ope."
Ope, they've got French ope.
French ope, yeah. On that French ope. Yeah, I mean, it's weird, man. I learn new words because of situational things, so I know that my vocabulary is expanding. There are some times when I think that I'm actually like in some ways worse because like I'm not practicing it correctly. So like I do have to use some of the more like complex constructions of things in French, like I would just say like I would have been able to do, or I would have had to have done, things like that. I know how to do that like reflexively, but there's a lot of things where I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing this right, and I would benefit from doing an actual like C1 or C2 course. But the problem is, it's just like, when the fuck am I going to have time to do that? I have so little time as is. And it's just, I feel like I'm struggling all the time lately with like not letting people down when it comes to deadlines and timelines and updates and things, because it's just like, you know, you have a finite amount of time in a day. And in my case, it's childcare stuff. And until I can get my own workspace, like a lot of times that childcare stuff is also governed by whether or not, like, for example, I'm kind of getting away with being a dickhead right now. I'm recording, but my daughter's napping, and like I'm in the next room over, so she might hear my voice, and I don't want to wake her up early, you know. And it's like, I do know that things will settle down. We've actually got like some changes coming, which will have longer hours each day, and then starting in April we should be able to have 5 days a week childcare. So like that's great. It's like those things, all those DIY projects too, man. You know how it is, like oh man, like I could get this done. It's like, yeah, you could, but when are you going to do it, given what you've got going on?
I've got a honey-do list that I gaze longingly at every once in a while. In April I'm going to have a week to myself. The wife and kid are going to be out of town, but even during that, like all the art projects that I have like kind of languishing on my workbench downstairs need some kind of attention. And yeah, it's hard to find any time, especially like, you know, now I start to find, okay, the podcast and the store and all this stuff is at a even keel. Maybe I can start going to the gym 3 times a week, and then like my regular like civilian job, my regular non-podcasting job, you know, I'm advancing my career there, and I'm having to work more hours there. And so finding those times for anything, like it's just, sometimes it's like I just want to read for 15 minutes and sleep, and if that's all I'm going to get out of this, then that's fine, I guess. But yeah, you're not unfortunately with kids, everything changes every 6 months no matter what, and you just find you don't have time for anything, especially when you have, like you and I both have, multiple streams of income that you have to keep up on at any given time. So
I mean, I'll tell you too that yesterday I had kind of a feeling like the worst parent on earth day, and it was fine, but it's just more that on Wednesdays, you know, we don't have childcare, and so I take care of my daughter solo, and I was dealing with some stuff earlier in the morning, like a technical thing for Trash Future. So when I had any kind of time, I was trying to solve that, but it's not easy when an almost 18-month-old was constantly trying to like slam your computer closed and generally be that way. And twice yesterday I was cooking because I cooked her pasta and I made pesto sauce. And then for Cynthia and I cooked this like noodle-less kind of variant on this New York Times recipe that we like. That's like a chili oil noodles thing. And both times, you're boiling water to make noodles. And both times my daughter was like really on one in the kitchen. And I had to she kept kind of like trying to fight to get between me and the stove, like wanting like my attention, wanted me to pick her up. But like when you have to pick up a pot of boiling water full of noodles and strain it, like that's not. And finally I was like, look, I just picked her up and I took her into her room, which she can very safely play in, and closed the door. And I was expecting a torrent of screams and I felt horrible. She was fine. She's absolutely fine. She didn't complain at all. She was great. She's super chill, and I was so proud of her. But also, like the next time it happened, I wasn't even at the point of dumping the water, but we were getting to that point, and she came in with this toy she's got that's got like an axle with like a threaded axle and like these plastic gears that like spin, and it's really cool. But she took it and she threw it all across the kitchen floor. It hit me in the leg, and it was just now there's like plastic booby traps I can slip on all over. And I looked at her and I was just like, stop. And obviously she didn't look scared or guilty or upset because she's a baby. She doesn't really understand. So I can't be mad at her. But I realized that me very emphatically looking at her and saying stop did not register at all. And I was like, yeah, you need to go into your room because like this is just going to be dangerous. I'm worried about the boiling water and you underneath. And so
you cannot throw caltrops down while your dad is trying to cook here.
Or throw your bottle of water at me and hit me in the foot numerous times.
This is not a punk show in 1974. Chill out, child.
Yeah. So I took her into her room the second time, and then after that I brought her out, and I was once again feeling super guilty. And it was just so funny because I opened the door and she was super happy, and she just went running right to the kitchen and just grabbed the first plastic thing she could and threw it again. And I was just like, wow, have you just been like, you didn't see that as you getting in trouble. You just saw that as like recharging your battery so you could do it even harder.
Yeah.
I love her to death. I took her to the store because I had to buy go to this Japanese grocery store to pick up some of the things to make this dish with. And I actually didn't take the stroller. We walked, and if she needed help or she was going really slow, I would carry her. And she was so well behaved, and like everyone, like old people, young people, women, men, everyone was like, she was waving and they were waving back. It was super cute. She was really well behaved. Like I was so proud of her. But then as soon as we get back in the house, she's like, I'm going to fucking throw everything. And it's just like,
you're gonna find that kids have this thing where they will be good outside of the house, but like inside of the house is where they know it's safe for them to unleash, and that's good. Like I would rather, like when my daughter would have meltdowns, I would rather you have the meltdowns in our house at us and not at a stranger in the grocery store. But that does become really irritating when you're just like, I've seen you be well behaved, I've seen you be adorable and charm adults. Why are you hitting me in the head with a plastic baseball bat right now? I don't understand this.
I remember a friend of mine from Tennessee, and he had a photo of his son meeting Juicy J, and his son was probably, I think, 5 or 6 at the time. And he was like, it's funny because like he was a little bit shy in this photo, so he's not looking like, like I'm pretty, if I remember correctly, Juicy J's literally like holding him up. But he was like, yeah, it wasn't, he was just, he can be really shy and like self-conscious. He's like, whereas at the house, it's the exact opposite. He's like, I have to be like, let people have their personal space. Like you have to let people have their personal space. And someone was like, so it's basically if the rest of 3-6 Mafia came to your house and hung out, your son would be like trying to get piggyback rides and jumping all over them. But like if they meet them in public, he's like shy and reserved because like, yeah, public people is different than in the house people.
Well, yeah, because in the house is safe. We know, in the house is where all of my things are. It's where it's safe. It's where I can be who I am. And that is both a blessing and a curse sometimes.
It's so funny, by the way. Cynthia sent me this thing talking about being who you are. It was a joke about like you're at a barbecue, but the DJ is from Houston, and everything just starts becoming like chopped and screwed versions of things. But it was playing a Paul Wall song, and I actually went, and I was out of curiosity went back and looked and found it was from a couple years ago, the Drinking Champs, I think is what it's called, or Drink Champs podcast with was it DJ EFN and Nore, and they were interviewing him for like almost 2 hours, and I watched the whole thing. And talking about being who you are, man, Paul Wall is just like, he's so like, that's just who he is, and like I think people can see that like legitimate, he's not kind of pretending to be guy. He's just man loves grills, man loves candy slabs, man loves wood grain wheels, loves weed, loves drank, loves his wife, wants to stay married. You know what I mean? Like you can actually really respect it.
I can relate. I am Paul Wall.
I mean,
be like Paul Wall, I guess. I don't really know too much about him.
Do you know? Do you know?
I know who he is. I'm just not a music guy. So like,
sure. I mean, he did have this very funny story about early in the days when like he was already kind of popular off of mixtapes, and he was doing a show in Florida, and people didn't. This is pre-internet. People didn't like pre-social media, pre like real big time getting stuff off the internet. People didn't know, and he was in the bar before the show, and a guy, and obviously like there were probably not very many, if any, other white people in the bar, and there was a guy who was like, yeah, you know, talking to his friend, like, you know, when's Paul Wall? Like, how long we gotta wait for Paul Wall to perform? And he was like, oh, I'm gonna be on in like 10 minutes. But the guy looked him up and down and was sort of like, man, get the fuck out of here. And he was like, all right, cool, man, whatever. I don't want this man to start a fight with me, whatever, it's fine. It is what it is. And then afterwards, the guy came up to him. He was like, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was you. And honestly, like, I gotta be real with you. I don't mean to disrespect you, but I fucking hate white people, but you're my favorite rapper. It was so good, man. I was like, I laughed so hard. I was like, oh fuck, am I gonna wake my daughter up? I found the way that on the YouTube you send the share, you know, they send the link and it has the timestamp to take it to that exact moment, and I did that to send it to Cynthia.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's somebody who recently passed where everybody was surprised that he was a white guy. I can't remember. It doesn't. Yeah, I'm not a music person, so it doesn't do much for me. Nate, are you ready to do a Hey Dad question?
Yeah, let's do a Hey Dad question.
What is a weird benefit you've gotten from hosting your respective podcasts? So I get recognized every once in a while. I got recognized by voice by a trans derby girl because I had been on Well, There's Your Problem. And they're a big fan of November. And
that's so funny.
Yeah, and I guess I have a distinctive voice. I know people say that they can't tell you and me apart, which I think is very strange.
People say they can't tell me and Riley apart, which is very odd to me too. Because I think we sound very distinct.
Yeah, but I do occasionally, like, I don't really get benefits, but I do get occasionally recognized. And that is like, you know, we don't have the biggest show. What a Hell of a Way to Dad is not the biggest show. We don't, you know, we're not pulling down Hassan numbers. Certainly not pulling down Trash Future numbers, but it is nice to occasionally have somebody be like, oh yeah, I listen to you, I recognize your voice, or I recognize the stuff that you're selling because I've been to your website and I recognize, you know, these designs that you do. So, you know,
what's funny is I actually hung out with Hassan in London before he was really big on Twitch. Like, he was on the Young Turks, and like he was definitely somebody who was like a public figure, but nowhere like what it became later on. And he's a really nice guy.
He's been on our show.
Yeah, he's genuinely really, really wonderful, nice guy. But it was funny because like sometimes I've seen some of the things with like how much that kind of like living in LA and dealing with like fans being everywhere can be insane. And I think I'm probably the least recognized person from TF in terms of people. Like, I mean, people know what I look like, but more often than not, when people recognize me, it's because of there's a show that night and like I'm nearby for obvious reasons. I would say hosting the various podcasts. I mean, to give you a story, early on, like 2017, 2018, early on, I got recognized by my voice in New York, actually. Friend of a friend in the bar, I mentioned I did a podcast, and he's like, was it Hell of a Way to Die? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, yeah, I'm a fan. Like, it was so weird. But I would say, I think that, you know, underreported benefit. I think for me, it's been that I've had some really cool really cool and really life-changing opportunities from this. And like, for example, you know, I am not in a position yet of wanting to like share stuff, but I have been working with a friend who's like a much more advanced, much more experienced songwriter than I am. And like, I've been helping him kind of flesh out and track some of his demos, but also sometimes if I give him an idea for an actual serious song, if he likes it, we work on it together. I actually met him outside a TF show. He came to the show. We had a couple of mutual friends. We started talking. He was like, you know, I know you've probably had bad fan experiences, but I actually work doing some kind of like tech oversight stuff for a law firm. And I get some of the stupidest legal tech startup things pitching to us. I would gladly send them your way if you want dumb startups. And I was like, sure, man, here's my number. And we got to be friends, and now we're like really close friends. And, you know, I'm actually getting to work on music with someone he's so humble about it. His songwriting is fucking unbelievable to me. And he's a really, really, really good guitarist, which I'm not. And I wouldn't have met him without TF. I mean, I wouldn't have performed. I wouldn't have gotten back into writing, composing, sequencing music if it hadn't been for TF. With this show, I wouldn't have met Joe. I wouldn't have met Riley. I wouldn't have met any, like, I got on TF TF as a guest before I became the producer because they wanted to do a talk about the Strava heat map, like revealing all these secret U.S. military base locations because motherfuckers wanted to get their tracked workouts in and decided to be like, let me draw the architectural diagram of the entire base, all the grids and shit. So I think really with Hell of a Way, I think the biggest thing for me is I've met some really, really nice people. I met a fan in Glasgow who crocheted a baby blanket for my daughter, and she knew that we were expecting a baby because of Hell of a Way. It was such a genuinely nice gift that we still use to this day. Like I still text her every now and again and just be like, here's a photo of my daughter in the baby blanket, like
with the blanket,
with a blanket. It's really nice. And like, you know, my mom wasn't really in a position to do the kind of knitting she wanted to, which I understand because like my dad needs full-time care. Sure. And fans have, you know, done really, really nice heartfelt things because they wanted to. And I think to me, like, all of it starts with this show. Like I wouldn't have done anything else if it hadn't been for this show, you know, and if I hadn't been producing TF, November wouldn't have asked me if I wanted to produce this hypothetical James Bond film podcast. You know what I mean? I know that Joe also, his roots come back to this because I read Hooligans of Kandahar, and one benefit that I really like from having this show is that I've gotten to talk to a lot of really great authors. We had Cory Doctorow on. That was a really great interview that we did. I had Joe Haldeman on. Joe Haldeman was on one too. Yeah. So, and I haven't pushed as hard on getting authors again. I'm going to start doing that because I want to get Bernard Cornwell on before, you know, because he's in his 80s. So I want to get him on before he's not able to, you know, do recordings or podcasts. But I think that like the ability to, you know, have the ability to say, hey, I have something that could benefit you and I really want to talk to you and have you on because I admire you, and them saying, yes, I see value in that. And you know, like it kind of puts you up above like, oh, I'm just a fan. Can I talk to you for an hour about whatever I want? You know, you have to give them something back for it. But it's really great to have that. You know, like I said, Cory Doctorow was a great interview, and we got him because somebody, you know, our email, the Sergeant Joker email, has been spread out among so many websites about, you know, if you want to do a interview for podcasts, here's one that's military adjacent. And we get 9 times out of 10, it's some light bird colonel. It's PR's hawking books for like military, how to get business success with Navy SEAL secrets or some shit. Yeah.
10 things I learned by flying C-130s across Afghanistan and how, you know, it can change your life too.
Yeah, because back in the olden days when you had to fly a C-130 full of rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong, that was considered a bad thing, like what they threatened Maverick with in Top Gun. But now you can sell a book about it.
Yeah, you can. You too could be a self-helper. So it's been really great to have those opportunities to bring people on and talk to them. And because I love doing interviews. Like doing interviews is one of my favorite things. Talking to people about books that they write or the things that they're doing, because I'm very interested in people. You know, that's a big part of the reason why I have a podcast is not just, you know, our own, we need some way to deal with the trauma of, you know, having been ex-soldiers, but also now the trauma of being fathers. And it has that, you know, it has that ability. It gives you somebody to talk to. And so it's nice to have that. It's nice to be, to have this kind of, you know, a reach, I guess, that I wouldn't have had without it. So, you know, it's a lot of self-serving stuff. It's not really, you know, something that somebody has given me, but it is something, you know, like you said, this show has propelled you into other places and, you know, taught you, hey, you can do this. Because like the producer that we had first for this, when he left the show and you said, I think I can do this. And then it just, you know, kind of, you know, ramps up from there. You know, it's the same thing. It's having something that I can, you know, tell people, I can bring people on, and I can, you know, tell my dad, like, hey, Dad, I've interviewed Joe Haldeman. You should listen to this. I'm going to be meeting John Scalzi, who wrote Old Man's War. The Old Man's War series is coming to St. Louis, doing a book tour. I'm going to try to nudge my way into like, hey, maybe you want to come talk to the podcast about some of your books. And I would love that. I would love to have another author on. So, and I have the confidence to do that because I have a podcast for the last 9 years at this point, almost 9 years, 8.5 years, I guess. So
yeah, it's crazy. Nice. It's really getting close to getting, you know, very soon it'll be a decade that we've been doing this. I mean, it'll be thinking about that era, that period of my life, like, you know, coming up pretty soon will be 10 years since Cynthia and I have been together. You know, it was right after we got married the next year that I came on this show, and then it kind of went from there. You know, it's been nuts. So I might be in a position to also help out a friend of mine with some things that might be able to help him finally get out of Pakistan. And if I don't know if I'll be able to or not, but if I am, and it's because of the business stuff that I do, it'll be because of the fact that I have sort of a organized thing that I do to produce podcasts, and I hope it works out. Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, I'm grateful for all of that. So yeah, I guess that's my, the unappreciated benefit is it fucking changes your life sometimes.
Yeah. And you know what? We couldn't do it without you listeners and without those of you who give us a couple bucks on Patreon. And even if you can't, you know, spreading the news and telling people about us is great. So we appreciate our listeners sticking around for 8+ years at this point and all the changes and things that we've gone through. So I'm grateful to those of you who we are a part of your weekly experience. So we do appreciate that. But if you want more, of course, like I said, we have the Patreon, patreon.com/hellofawaydodie. $5 gets you access to 3 bonus episodes a month, plus 8 years of bonus content previous that you can scrub through. The Cory Doctorow interviews in there. The Joe Haldeman one is in there too, but that should be on the free feed somewhere. That was years ago. That
was so long ago. Yeah. But we can dig it up and see if we can find that episode. It probably sounds like shit because I was worse at producing back then. But
and I was so nervous the entire time because I just love his book so much.
I still thought it was so funny that he was like, was there a reason why you made lots of people like the idea was that like being gay was encouraged? And he's like, no, honestly, I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, he's like, and I said, so why did you continue the story? He's like, well, they offered me money, so I did the thing. And I do love, one thing I love about following John Scalzi on Blue Sky is people are like, well, what is it that keeps you writing? He's like, I've got a fucking mortgage, man. What do you think keeps me writing? Like sometimes art is just the thing that you're good at, and you know this particular art is the thing you're good at, but you're still under the same crunch of like, I have to keep doing this because you know you don't write a book and you're just like, oh, that's it, I'm rich forever. You have to keep
it's like when I was in my 20s and I thought if I was successful at something like this, I could, you know, buy like a fucking, what they call a chambre de bonne or a pied a terre, like in Paris or something, like a tiny, like 7th floor walk-up studio apartment. I'm like, well, then I own a place and I have to work. I was like, I don't want to live like that for the rest of my fucking life. Also, no. I never had that kind of money, and now it's impossibly expensive. But you know what I mean? Like, no, you gotta, sometimes it is your job, but like hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, but hopefully you enjoy it. So, but anyway, thank you
Sorry.
Thank you everybody for listening. We will talk to you next week.
Have a good one.